The great Dick York was best known and well-loved for his long-suffering mortal role of Darrin Stephens on the long-running magical sitcom Bewitched. This high-strung normal fella was living with a witch.
Larry, we're not kidding. My wife is a witch.
He didn't originally know the chaos he was in for. And somehow, in a fantastical world, Dick York gave us an everyman, a gangly guy who loved his wife as much as he hated intimate moments with his mother-in-law.
I stopped all your calls for a few minutes.
But the consensus is the magic left Bewitched, along with Dick York in season 6, losing his sharp comic timing and terrific chemistry with Elizabeth Montgomery. So why did Dick York depart from this extremely successful sitcom? And just how much pain was this actor suffering through while he was hitting his mark? I'm your host, Nostalgic Nick, and today we're looking at the life, career, and sad ending of the beloved Dick York. But before we get to that Burbank studio where history happened, we first have to start in Indiana. The beginnings of Dick York. Richard Allen York was born in Fort Wayne, Indiana in 1928 to Bernard and Betty York. He grew up in the height of the Great Depression, and along with many others, York knew what it was like to be poor, and in turn made it his mission to help those who were less fortunate. But we'll get to that soon. As a teenager, York was living in Chicago and got an early start in acting. At just 15 years old, a Catholic nun recognized his strong voice potential, and he landed a starring gig on the CBS radio show That Brewster Boy. He worked in various radio shows and commercials for the next few years. And the other network, ABC, had an eye on York too. Even the Navy hired Dick to act in their recruiting videos that were shown in high schools across the US.
One was eating buns. Hell, I can't help him. It's a doc's job.
And after this early success, Dick York moved to New York City and began getting his feet wet on Broadway in the 1950s. Some notable shows were Tea and Sympathy and Bus Stop. He began to get screen work in 1953, acting with Adam West in an episode of the Philco Television Hour. And by 55, he was getting major film roles. First, co-starring with Janet Leigh and Jack Lemmon in the musical My Sister Eileen. And York followed Jack Lemmon to Operation Madball in 1957, which was actually the screen debut of Mary Tyler Moore. On the call sheet, she's listed as Mary Moore. In 1958, one more time with Jack Lemmon in the dark, realistic Western Cowboy, where Lemmon nearly died during the Longhorns cattle stampede sequence. The crew were all scared to death as a stuntman had not been hired. Realism indeed. And this near injury precurses our next chapter of Dick York's life, as his onset injury would not be amiss. The injury. In 1959, Dick York was in the movie They Came to Cordura, with a starring role alongside Gary Cooper and Rita Hayworth.
I really was scared in that fight. That's why I bit my chin strap through.
But in the final scenes of the film, while using a hand-operated railroad car, one of the extras on the car grabbed onto the handle opposite of Dick York, and the unexpected motion caused the muscles in the right side of Dick's back to tear completely, causing extreme pain and a debilitating spinal injury that would alter the rest of his life and career. There was no cure for his injury, and the amount of painkillers he took was steadily increasing. York said the following about the incident, quote, "The muscles along the right side of my back tore. They just snapped and let loose. And that was the start of it all. The pain, the painkillers, the addiction, the lost career." He'd complete his final film role in 1960 in the Spencer Tracy courtroom drama Inherit the Wind. He played the part of teacher Bertram Cates, which was based on the real incident of the Scopes monkey trial that took place in 1925. And this is a phenomenal picture if you've not seen it.
And with drums beating, we'll be marching backward. Backward!
And was actually the very first in-flight movie ever shown on Trans World Airlines. But film work is very labor-intensive, so Dick York decided to stick to television. Work despite pain. Dick York took pain medication to alleviate the stress, and kept right on working. He guest starred on some of the best TV shows of the 50s and early 60s, highlighted by 2 episodes of The Twilight Zone and 6 appearances on Alfred Hitchcock Presents. In 1962, Dick co-starred with Gene Kelly in the short-lived spin-off series Going My Way, based on the Bing Crosby film. But it did not catch on, and it would be Gene Kelly's final weekly television attempt. York, however, was not done yet. Bewitched. Bewitched began in 1964, and although Samantha promised she'd not do magic around Darrin, that never played out, and we often saw Darrin transformed in one way or another, much to his dismay.
Darrin, what are you doing? You said that...
Don't try to stop me, Sam. She's been asking for this for a long time.
They had a whimsical marriage, to say the least, and audiences and critics loved York's Darrin Stephens. He was even nominated for an Emmy Award in 1968, but he lost out to Don Adams from Get Smart. Now, Dick York loved working on this show, but that's if he could bring himself to set. His back injury had flared up again, and in a bad way. He couldn't stand for long periods of time. A slanted wall was built for him to lean against between shots. During season 3, the filming of the show was slowed down to attempt to accommodate York. More and more scenes were tweaked to where York was now sitting or lying down, but his part was being cut from scenes so that production could go on. And during season 5 of the show, York experienced a medical emergency, was taken to the hospital, and spent some time recovering. A producer of Bewitched visited him and asked if he was ready to quit working on the show. Dick York replied, "If it's all right with you." He never came back to that Burbank set, and production quietly replaced him with another actor, Dick Sargent. Unfortunately, the new Dick didn't have the same charm, and the ratings began to decline fast. Addiction. York was worn out from this back pain, and even before he left Bewitched, he was addicted to the opiate painkiller so necessary for a day's work. It got so bad he would be absent from filming because he was too high on his meds. But finally, York decided to quit taking the drugs and went through terrible withdrawal symptoms. But thankfully, he had quit the painkillers for good. York the Landlord. Eventually, he and his wife, who was his childhood sweetheart named Joan Alt, with whom he had 5 children and remained with until his ultimate passing. Well, the two bought an apartment building together, and York turned into a kind landlord who didn't even evict tenants when they didn't pay rent. But this generosity caused the Yorks to fall behind on payments, and the bank wasn't so generous, forced to foreclose on the property. The Yorks were allowed to stay in their apartment, but had to clean the other units for the bank foreclosure. It's definitely not what Stanley Roper would have done, but hey, sometimes people just can't pay. And Dick York was a kind soul with declining health. After their building was foreclosed, the Yorks were very poor. They didn't have money to visit the dentist, and his teeth were now rotting. Not to mention, he had put on a lot of weight and now couldn't find steady work. But he did make one final return. A return to TV. In the early 80s, he lost some weight and began to look like himself again. And this charming actor appeared on single episodes of Simon & Simon in 1983 and Fantasy Island the following year. His final acting credit was in the TV movie High School USA, but acting as a whole was not done with Dick York quite yet. Acting for life. Known for his compassionate nature, Dick York founded the charity Acting for Life to help those in need. Specifically, he helped people find a way out of homelessness. He knew what it was like to have nothing and struggle for food. And York knows that everyone's one step away from homelessness, whether they realize it or not. York truly had a heart of gold. And in his final years, while oftentimes bedridden, he spent much of his time on the phones with businessmen, politicians, and others, crowdsourcing money and supplies for his charity. Sadly, Dick York was a smoker for much of his life. It was not unusual for him to go through 3 packs a day. This led to a battle with emphysema, and by 1989, he was mostly seen wearing an oxygen tank to help him breathe. And Dick York passed away from those breathing complications on February 2nd, 1992. He was only 63 years old. But York once stated about his life, quote, "I've been blessed. I have no complaints. I've been surrounded by people in radio, on stage, and in motion pictures and television who love me. The things that have gone wrong have been simply physical things." I mean, that's pretty profound. From a star actor who had an on-set extra derail his entire career trajectory, Dick York could have easily put blames on others, but he did not. So let's toast to the original Darrin, the great Dick York. Do you have a favorite Darrin moment from Bewitched? Or what's a film of his you've seen? Get in those comments and let us know. We love hearing from each and every one of you. If you enjoyed today's deep dive, consider clicking that thumbs up for us, it really helps. And subscribe to the channel so you never miss a throwback. But from all of us here at Do You Remember, we want to thank you for watching.